Save money on books. Anyone going to the bookstore? Can I go with?
Something about it?
Yeah, but they won't. So then get tied up in 20 years, but then say instantly, but it's not as bad as that, and the changes that they are proposing would have devastating economic consequences on regular Americans, and we'd lose millions of jobs.
Mitigate some of the consequences that we're already seeing from climate change. So this story is, positive on its face, but it also makes America look idiotic because we're still stuck on this stupid conversation.
Yeah. I think in reference to what you were
Hanging out, saving money on books. Anyone going to the bookstore? Can I go with?
to it. They have meetings with scientists, some of which are persuasive. Neil deGrasse Tyson, he makes a good case. And so I think that many of them probably believe it. And I think that that is just, they're willing in 10 years perhaps to be forced to the position of arguing about the economic consequences. I think as long as they can hold out on the argument against science, they don't have to have a much more complicated discussion about the effect on the economy of doing something about it. Because it's easy for some Republicans right now to say that if we were to do carbon sequestration or carbon caps or things like that, it would stifle economic growth. But then that can be countered by others who say, well, look at the solar industry. It's employing tons of people, more and more every year. We produce more solar capacity in one day than we did in the first 10 years of solar. That sort of thing. You can actually get into an economic argument for the benefits of doing something about it. And I don't think they want to have that argument at all.
It's so stupid. I mean, we should be world leaders when it comes to investing in renewable energy, and it's something that we've completely ignored. Or not completely ignored, but for the most part we've ignored. And we go back to the stupid argument that, hey, Solyndra went under, and so it's a waste of money. We shouldn't be investing in that. But you know what else has a big economic impact? Climate change, right? So when we have a difficult time growing crops because the weather patterns are unpredictable, that's going to have an economic consequence, not just in the United States, but in other countries as well. And that can definitely lead to more serious consequences, like, I don't know, war over resources, over food, or
massive displacements of populations.
Exactly.
And even if the extreme examples prove, and that there is scientific debate over it, like how severe the results will be. I mean, even the least severe results are worth trying to tamp down. I mean,
the results we're experiencing today are bad, let alone in 2100.
So I don't know if you guys remember, but in the morning meeting, I brought up that the spokesman for BP had responded to Inhofe's claim that it was a hoax.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, let's be clear really fast. So Inhofe voted that it is not a hoax, and then held a meeting where he explained all the reasons that it is a hoax.
Right. So he called
he's just lying with his vote.
And then in his tweet, he included both the tweet from Sheldon Whitehouse, senator from Rhode Island, who proposed this legislation, and Inhofe's hoax line, I guess, from not the vote, but from his press conference, right? Mm-hmm. And said, if I remember correctly, he just said simply, the gentleman from Oklahoma is mistaken. Saying, and to me, that was a smart move from BP, because Inhofe, who, by the way, is the chairman of the Environment and Public Works Committee.
So depressing.
The chairman called it a hoax. Go ahead. You keep voting Republican. Makes a lot of sense. Just stop voting if you're going to vote for these guys. Just don't involve.
I want everyone to vote, but I want them to think about it first.
You can't, in good conscience, if you're a right-thinking American, and I know some right-thinking Republicans, right? You can't. This party made him the chairman of the Environment Committee on the Environment. So anyway, so I thought it was smart of BP because it's a free shot. Like, it's Inhofe. We all know it's not a hoax. Isn't that a trick? Right? Right? And so, and I was going to bring that tweet up, and I would thought that we'd add it during production.
It was deleted?
It's gone.
Well,
I knew it.
Yeah.
I mean, as a spokesperson for BP, you don't post something like that on Twitter.
Yeah, you might have gotten yelled at today.
Of course. Of course.
Yeah.
Now, one other aspect of this that we do want to talk about, and it's something that over the course of the next year we're going to talk about more and more, is where the potential presidential nominees come down on the important issues of the day. This is an important issue not just for today, but for the rest of, I guess, the future of humanity. And we would like it to last a while, so perhaps we should do something about climate change. So we've got Mitt Romney being clear in a statement that he put out today that he does believe that the Earth is warming. Beyond that, he believes that we're contributing to it, and he even seems like he might want to do something about it were he to become president. And that is beyond most of the other potential Republican nominees. But we do have a positive sign about at least one other one. Now, we told you there were multiple amendments that were debated before the Sheldon Whitehouse amendment was actually was voted on. Senator John Hooven of North Dakota put forward an alternative amendment that the Keystone Oil Pipeline would not significantly impact the environment or contribute to global emissions. The provision included a line stating that humans contribute to climate change, but without the word significantly. So that was the major change. But it does say that we contribute to it. 15 Republicans voted for that amendment, including I think it's Rand Paul, making him the only 2016 contender to go on record as saying that human beings contribute to climate change. So that goes slightly beyond the larger 98-1 amendment that we talked about. I don't know if that he now is going to have ads run against him because how dare you acknowledge that? But it was, at least in the current political environment, a somewhat brave move to make, I suppose.
I think that worth mentioning here about Romney is that he's scheduled to meet this week in Utah with Jeb Bush, a meeting that I guess has been on the books for some time. Perhaps originally scheduled as Bush going out to sort of pay his respects to the two-time candidate and the flag bearer in the last cycle. But now it looks as if Romney may run himself. And, he's called his people. He's trying to realign the people who helped finance his campaign and the people who ran it. I see
Jeb.
No, Romney. Again, Jeb is going to run. Obviously he could change his mind, but he has taken all of the steps one takes before they run for president. Only in this crazy system where you get to have a preliminary exploratory committee are we not allowed to say that Jeb Bush is running for president, but we're not bound by those dumb rules. Jeb Bush is running for president. He resigned from all boards that would suggest conflict of interest. He divested himself. Yeah. So he went out to meet with Romney, and I think that, and I'm merely echoing what a bunch of smart people who I read think, is that there's not room for those two guys for long. They're neither of them moderate, but in this world where people like Ted Cruz and Michelle Bachmann and Ben Carson run for president, who are you going to say?
I was going to say Joni Ernst, not that she's running for president.
Well, but vice presidential candidate, certainly, where there are just these extreme, right, Lindsey Graham, extreme right-wingers, although he appeals and he has had moments of reasonableness. These people seem moderate because they're not totally crazy. They were both governors. They had to govern. They ran states with a lot of powerful Democrats. They cut deals with them. They know. Or
at the very least, they don't have the strong, evangelical streak that causes them to say the horrendous things on a regular basis.
They seem less dangerous. Mitt Romney Romney Care is the blueprint for Obamacare, and Jeb Bush is at the forefront by himself of Republican thinking on immigration. So they both have big issues where they do not stand with the overwhelming majority of the political leadership of that party. So they went out there, and Brian Butler, right in the New Republic, he's just got a really nice take, and it's just worth remembering as they meet this week. He says, the problem for those candidates, Bush and Romney, is that this Cold War-like equilibrium, one of them has to go. It won't last long. And if they both stay around for long in the primary process, they increase the risk that somebody comes around on the outside of them, somebody neither of them wants. So who is better positioned to win that slugfest and become the standard bearer? Romney, you'll remember, if he hadn't vanquished everybody from the race early, he probably would have lost. The point that Butler makes, but the strength for these guys is clearing the field very early, and having the far right
inevitability,
right, and having the far right and the Tea Party go, I hate this guy, but okay, they beat it. What are we going to do? and then sort of those people then come back to the fold. It would be much harder to do with these two moderate, super artificial use of the word moderates, slugging out the last thing that Bugler says. The problem Romney faces now, Bush will probably have more money at his disposal than anyone he's ever defeated. So again, why they're so similar. These will be two incredibly well-financed guys with very similar resumes looking for the exact same kind of voter.
Yeah. Well, and also importantly, once you get into the actual primary process, it could be that they'll be splitting potential donors as well. I mean, the sort of person that might want to donate to one of them might consider the other were that.
Mitigate some of the consequences that we're already seeing from climate change. So
It's like an odd strategy to continue on, Ben. I think there's two things that we should know. One, that there are some Republicans at least who are already admitting that it's real, but saying that the economic consequences of doing literally anything about it would be too severe. So that a few are doing that it's real or not. I would assume that most actually believe it's real, probably believe that we're contributing to it. They have meetings with scientists, some of which are persuasive. Neil deGrasse Tyson, he makes a good case. And so I think that many of them probably believe it. And I think that is just, they're willing in 10 years perhaps to be forced to the position of arguing about the economic consequences. I think as long as
Over 200,000 people are hospitalized every year with flu complications. Lysol disinfectant spray is approved to kill 80 germs, including viruses that can live on surfaces for over 4 weeks. So help keep your family healthy with Lysol.
You avoid that, then you've already dealt with those problems. And 47% really doesn't come up again because it came up. It's done.
Yeah.
And you can sort of, and all of a sudden the things that immediately, I don't want to get too deep into it, but the things that worked against Romney, that he's seen as a person of privilege, completely unrelatable to anybody else, turn into, oh, look, that poor guy got knocked down and he's trying to get back up. That's just like me. Like, amazingly, Mitt Romney then gets the things that he could never get by the virtue of being the comeback kid, you know.
Yeah.
I think
it's stupid, but it's sort of how mindsets are.
I think whatever chance he had, and he did okay in the last election. I mean, he didn't stop Obama from winning the popular vote, but I mean, his image as not a particularly like engaging speaker. He's not firing at the conservatives, but he has this reputation as being at least a competent businessman and manager. And that sort of persona is far more appealing in relatively worse off economic times. Now, with the unemployment rate lower than he said it would be had he been president up until this point, I think that it's harder to make that case when people feel relatively better off. Not that we're in good times, but relatively better off. And I mean, when you think about foreign policy, not that necessarily people in presidential elections really care too much about foreign policy. When you think about the threat of ISIS, is Mitt Romney the man you want standing between you and Al Qaeda and the Arabian Peninsula? I don't know. I don't think Jeb Bush is either, but I don't think that Romney really has much credibility or strength when it comes to that area.
Let me just end this or wrap it up. But I think that my guess is that Romney, the reason he's thinking of running is because Republicans saw what was happening here, thought they had a savior in Chris Christie, but somebody obviously damaged, I suspect won't even run. And then all these other yahoos, right? Like Rand Paul is going to win?
John Bolton.
Right, John Bolton's going to run for president. What happened? I thought we were finished with this. Ben Carson is running.
Yeah.
These are crazy people. We can't, this won't work. Rick Santorum again. So they reached out to him, right? And if it was going to be, hey, look, I'm going to come back in as a savior this time, and I'm not going to have to go through this awful process where I almost lose. Great. So my guess is that sometime with Obama's popularity a little higher and with Jeb Bush in the race. And that's why that meeting will be interesting. This is total speculation, but you will see Mitt Romney being like, you know what, my time has come, and he won't run again. Even though all signs for the last 3 or 4 weeks have been gearing up to it. So
and not invited to the Koch brothers summit of some sort, at least. But yeah, he's still going to have Cruz and Rubio. I mean, those people are going to run. They're going to be pretty rough on Romney, I would imagine, were he to run. Okay, let's mix it up a little bit. Senator Joni Ernst's Republican response to the State of the Union was filled with some 1950s rural folksy references, discussion of how poor she was growing up, and all of that stuff appears, at least at this point, to be true. But she did leave out some significant other facts and bits of information about how she got from that poor girl in Iowa with plastic bags over her shoes to protect them from the rain to the senator that she is today. Now, she talked about working at the biscuit line at Hardee's, I believe it was.
Hardee's.
That was a part of her path to success, but there were other paths as well, or other sources of support.
I don't think Hardee's had a specific biscuit line. I think we've caught her in another line.
Another line?
Yeah, I was
Do they
wondering
serve
about
biscuits? I'm pretty sure they do. But no, Hardee's wasn't the only large organization that was there for her. The federal government was as well. Not just for her family. Farm subsidy records indicate that the freshman senator's father, Richard Culver, has received almost $40,000 in commodity subsidies and conservation payments, with all but $12 of the money being used for support of his corn crops.
By the way, just stop there because there's a
That's funny. I don't know exactly. I didn't even want that to be in the graphic, but anyway.
No, right. That means that they gave all the money and then they gave him $12.
Yeah.
For something else.
Yeah.
Well, it was for a club sandwich, actually. Ernst's uncle, Dallas Culver, has reportedly received $250,000 in federal corn subsidies and $117,000 in additional aid, and her paternal grandfather, Harold Culver, got an additional $57,000 in aid between 1995 and 2001. Now, this is especially important to note, the great assistance that her family, a family of farmers, received from the federal government, as so many farmers do, when you understand that she is not in favor of continuing those subsidies, philosophically. Radio Iowa reported last May that Ernst said she philosophically opposed federal farm subsidies during a GOP primary debate. However, she added she would continue to support them if elected. She went on to say, reality is that with the subsidies, unless we're eliminating all of them across the board at the same time for every sector out there, then I'll go ahead and support those subsidies. But still opposed to them, despite the fact that they massively helped out her family as she was up and coming.
How did she win?
It's amazing.
Yeah.
But this is Republican 101, right? I mean, they will take advantage of certain programs, governmental programs that help them out, help their families out, subsidies that have helped them out, help their families out. And then as soon as they've made it, that's it. They shut the door behind them, and they consider themselves these great patriots, right? They're supportive of our troops, and they'll parade around pretending like they're more American than liberals are. But the reality is, I mean, you took advantage of a system that allowed you to get yourself out of poverty, allowed your family to live a decent life, and then when it comes to generations after you, you don't give a shit. You just shut the door behind you. It's disgusting. It's the most unpatriotic thing you could possibly do. That's not what this country is supposed to be about.
Yeah. I mean, we saw from Steve Ducey, I think 2 days ago, perhaps, talking about the subsidies for community college to make it free to go for 2 years to community college, and he said, I just finished paying off my student loans, which is almost definitely a lie. But he said, I just finished paying my student loans. Why should anyone else get to go to community college for free? That's not America. And I'm not pointing this out because I think it was wrong that her family got the subsidies. I think many farm subsidies are a historical sort of, it's like a relic. I don't think that we necessarily should continue them. And certainly there are other subsidies like the energy industry that we should cut off. But they did help you. They did help out your family. They produced more wealth probably in the area of Iowa that you were in. And for you to want to cut those off after you've already reaped the benefits is typical, but also distressing, I think.
It is distressing. And look, this isn't even about farm subsidies. This is about a bigger picture. It's about governmental assistance, right? Whenever you hear Ernst talk about, we need to cut spending, what do you think she's talking about? She's always referring to cutting spending and cutting programs that help the poor. Mm-hmm. She's in favor of partially privatizing Social Security. She's against federal minimum wage. Anything that helps the needy, she's against, right? And it's typical Republican behavior. But these are the same individuals who have taken advantage of programs that have helped them and their families. Yeah. And that kind of hypocrisy should be called out as much as possible.
That's true, and that's why I like the story. I don't think it necessarily counters anything she said in her State of the Union, but she's in the news because of it, and she's obviously eager to cut subsidies across the board, and her family has benefited from it. It's certainly worth bringing to people's attention. I like, can I just mention Steve Ducey for a second? I wasn't on the show yesterday when you covered that, but I just like that idea because at some point somebody would have said, I didn't get to go to college. I had to kill British soldiers. So I don't think you should get a free college education either. Like, it's crazy. We make progress.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you could have gotten college for free, you should have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would have been a good thing.
Yeah.
I don't believe
I would have been okay with subsidizing his community college experience as well.
I find it hard to believe Steve Ducey got into a real college.
Well, he went to Kansas State, right?
He went to
University of Kansas.
Oh, he did? Oh, well, then he did. I stand corrected. Totally real school.
Supposedly still paying off his loans 40 years later. Maybe he missed a few along the way. But also,
Kansas?
I don't know.
On it.
He is? JR?
Born in Iowa, raised in Kansas, so he's
So if he was raised in Kansas and went to the University of Kansas, he went to a state school, he's got to be older than I am, Steve Ducey. Right? He's got to be 50 years old.
He did not just pay off.
Yeah, tuition was
also
$37.
What was your tuition? I mean, what do you know, $8,000 and he's 50 and he's been working the morning show at Fox News? I think you paid your I'm pretty sure you paid your bill.
There's another thing to take into consideration. Like, if Ducey is only concerned about himself and he doesn't care about young people at all whatsoever, I mean, you should also take into consideration that when students have this huge debt burden and they can't pay it off, right? They're paying it off for decades after they graduate college. It has an impact on our economy. Like, it's actually impacting our economy because we have more than $1 trillion in student loan debt in the country. It's already surpassed credit card debt. Yeah. But, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if that's complicated thinking for his ass, but
no,
crazy.
I do want to say that the reason that I felt like this was worth pointing out is because on the night of the State of the Union, you saw Obama and then you saw Joni Ernst. And they really mapped out different philosophies for how people succeed, how people get to where we want them to be in America. And Joni Ernst's story was a story of just working hard. All you have to do is work hard, and it doesn't matter if you start off serving biscuits and putting bags over your feet. That's all you need. Whereas Obama said, we want people to work hard. They're not looking for a handout, but they do need support from the government. So very different sort of philosophies of how we should get to the American dream. Yeah. And the problem is her life story doesn't support her story. It supports Obama's. It was a combination of hard work and support from the government. Her actual experience, she should be a Democrat. She worked hard. Yeah. She was responsible with her life. But her family was willing to accept help from the government, as so many families are. And to pass it off as supporting this Ayn Randian conservative ideal of what life is supposed to be like that is what I find to be false. And also, by the way, what we've been talking about is mostly her family, but understand that she also apparently has some corruption in her life as well. Salon reported last October that Ernst's father received more than $200,000 in contracts for his construction company during her stint as auditor for Montgomery County, despite a state rule requiring that contracts be voided if a county official or employee had an interest in the contractor. But to be fair, perhaps she's not all that interested in her father. And we do also have to point out, to be totally fair, hers was not the only little bit of an omission at the State of the Union night.
Hold on.
What's that?
Steve Ducey's kid.
Does he go to community college?
It's Peter Ducey.
Mm-hmm.
He went to Villanova. This is according to Wikipedia, but it looks true.
You are hilarious.
Come on. Screams true.
He is a Fox News reporter. Right. I didn't know that. So it's true. JR has established that it's true. He got hired at Fox News in 2009 after graduating from Villanova at 22. So Steve Ducey,
to be a reporter.
Steve Ducey does not want anybody to get the advantage of going to college for free. But he is totally prepared to let his 22-year-old son come to work at Fox News when it is in-fucking-conceivable that kid was even remotely qualified to work at a news station.
Yeah.
But he's 22.
And that's not just about Ducey. I mean, you worked in this field. Like, you work your way up doing local news.
You don't get your first job. There's no way. It's inconceivable. Of course, they hired him because he was Steve Ducey's kid.
Yeah.
At some point, I wouldn't begrudge him that job at 30. You come back, you're good. It's in your bones that you're a broadcaster. I get that. But he's so the advantages that come with being rich, those are fine for Steve Busey.
Yeah.
But the advantages of being poor, the people who would benefit from community, because if you're rich, you're probably not going to community college. You're paying for a 4-year college because your parents going to pay for it, or you'll be able to afford the loans. Who knows? But if it's for poor people in community college, he's against it. If it's handouts for privileged people to continue being privileged, Steve Busey's fine. And once again, evidence that Steve Busey is an unpatriotic. I'm so glad I didn't say the next one.
Was it going to start with a C?
I'm just glad I didn't say it. I held back. I'll stick with unpatriotic.
You have a great word or insult for people.
Jackbag. All right, I'll go with it. He's unpatriotic Jack.
Yeah.
All right.
So he's been at Fox News for 5 years now. Inconceivable that he's not better on air than Steve Busey. I would like to see him on Fox and Friends.
Steve Busey, when I was growing up in D.C., was at WRC in Washington, and he was like the fun features reporter. And he was funny. I was stunned to see that he was a
maybe he could head up a morning zoo somewhere.
Unpatriotic jackbag.
Yeah, he'd be good at that. Okay, let's fit in one more before we go to our first break. Back in 2007, Mike Huckabee was engaged in a fairly tight race for the Republican nomination for the presidency, and Mitt Romney, who would eventually go on to some success, needed a strategy to try to take the wind out of his sails, I suppose. And so he dispatched one of his campaign operatives to try to dig up some dirt on Mike Huckabee, to find some strong attack that would engage the emotions of Americans. And so they came up with this ad. Take a look.
I'm Mitt Romney, and I approve this message.
This is my daughter. She was pregnant with her first child. She was murdered by a serial rapist released early from prison in Arkansas. It was Mike Huckabee's intent that Wayne DeMond be released from prison. It's a pattern of bad judgment, very bad judgment. I don't know how you could trust that person with the highest power in our country.
Wow, that's a really strong ad.
That is a strong ad.
Yeah.
Yes. He is a murderer, effectively. That is what the ad is getting across. He gave commuted sentences to over 1,000 people and at least 12 murderers. And you are left to fill in the gaps of what the crimes of the other 990 plus people were. Now, in Mitt Romney's defense, and I guess this is to his credit, he took a look at that ad and decided they would not actually run it. He said that it would make him look desperate.
Yeah, well,
and look, Mitt Romney has a lot of problems, but he's never come across to me as a particularly cruel or heartless guy outside of the business world when it comes to his actual business decisions. He's a heartless guy. But he did not decide to run that ad. But it has resurfaced because now it looks like there's a chance of both of them being in the next presidential race. And Mike Huckabee still possibly could be targeted by these allegations.
I would have played that ad.
Yeah, there's also the cynic in me would suggest that this was the plan all along. You make the ad, you produce it, then you don't run it and say you're not going to run it. Everybody talked about it anyway. The Wayne DeMond story was not a mystery to anyone, so it just gets it out there. You don't even have to. In fact, you could run the ad without even mentioning Wayne DeMond and then let everyone dig up the Wayne DeMond story on their own.
And then discuss it.
And run it and discuss it.
The multiplier effect.
I did a lot of reading today on the Wayne DeMond case, which I remember vaguely from the 90s and the Clinton administration and into 2000, but didn't know well enough. And it is impossible to concisely tell you about because it's unclear exactly what happened, but it is a crazy case to read about and incredibly fun to dig into the politics of it right up until the point where a horrible rapist is released from prison and killed 2 people.
Yeah.
Raped and murdered 2 people. But Wayne DeMond, after his initial arrest, he was arrested for sexually assaulting the 17-year-old third cousin of Bill Clinton. Very distantly related. They had the same great-great-grandparents. So Clinton recused himself from that case, but 2 guys, according to Wayne DeMond, broke into his house before trial and castrated him, cut off his testicles. Some think that he may have cut his testicles off himself, but no one was ever arrested, charged with the crime. The sheriff came in, the sheriff who was known to some as I don't know, this sounds like horseshit, a Clinton toady. But anyway, what is clear from the sheriff's own testimony is that he paraded the testicles around and put them in a jar and displayed them, to which Wayne DeMond sued him and won $110,000 for whatever the law is that prevents you from displaying another man's testicles.
I believe it's a federal law.
And I think we're all in agreement. Good ruling. Yeah, we're all. So then Wayne, and so part of the argument for releasing Wayne Dumont was, hey, look, man, he's castrated. Turned out
it didn't matter.
Still sexual.
You can still do smart.
And then there became, and why Mike Huckabee is literally the least qualified person to be president and should be stopped at all costs is it's not so much that he released this guy because, and the fact is, if this, let's pretend that that the castration would prevent him from any sort of sexual behavior, although you can always still murder someone out of anger, right? Or sexual anger, right? But let's just say that the castration argument was real and that this terrible thing did happen to him. He didn't cut his own testicles off. You could make a case that after 15 years in prison, that was a terrible injustice that happened to that guy. And you know what? We're gonna release that guy. Like I hear that argument. I don't know whether I would have done it, but I hear that argument. But Mike Huckabee made that decision because he believed all that nonsense about Bill Clinton, all that right-wing vitriol, all that stuff from Richard Mellon Scaife, all that nonsense that
Dumont might have been innocent all along.
Right.
So pressure put on him by
he wasn't innocent right along. You know one reason we know he innocent? Because he got out, he murdered and killed 2 women. Right? So one of whom the daughter of the women we just in the ad we just aired. So, all that stuff in Blinded by the Right. All these books that documented this nonsense. Steve Dunleavy, this anti-American jackbag isn't enough for Steve Dunleavy, writer for the New York Post. Horrible, indecent human being who has blood on his hands today wrote about how Dumont should get out again and again. And this is who Mike Huckabee was listening to.
Yeah.
This was what penetrated Mike Huckabee's ears. And then had him apparently, according to many reliable media reports, write a letter at some point to Dumont saying, it is my sincere hope that you are released. And then Huckabee's defense had always been that technically the Arkansas Parole Board does the releases, not the governor. But they listened to him. He wanted it to happen, and it happened.
Yeah.
And now these 2 people are dead. Dumont, by the way, died. Was convicted of one of the crimes. Was about to be charged with the second crime when he died in prison, apparently of cancer. But I mean, the outcome of the case is terrible all by itself. But the insight into who this guy, who we like to think of, he's super dedicated, man of God and faith.
Jovial,
but
you could get along with
he
him.
plays the saxophone, I think, or he plays some instrument. He plays the guitar. He jams in a band, right, JR? Like we've seen.
Huckabee does?
Huckabee, yeah. Like and he can play a little bit. Like so, and so in Arkansas, it was like, hey, look, we had Clinton who played the sax, and then we got Huckabee, and he plays in a band, and he's super folksy. And likable.
Amazing that these things are even relevant.
But he's dumber than Michelle Bachmann.
He believes conspiracy theories.
Crazy stuff. Bill Clinton didn't murder people. You just didn't like him.
Yeah.
That was it. You didn't like him, and he won twice. And could have won a 3rd time and a 4th time, I think. I think he could have been president for 6 terms.
Maybe he'll come back.
Yeah, if there's only way to get him into the White House. So, and regardless of whether you agree with this policy, so the insight so read about Wayne Dumont, because the insight that it gives you into the kind of man that Mike Huckabee is worth the time it takes to get through the nonsense and to find out what's right and what's wrong in that case.
Yeah, and it might be that you'll never see that ad aired again, but it's not impossible to imagine that another candidate, perhaps one who's not as worried as Mitt Romney was of looking desperate, would bring up that case, air an ad involving that case, and that could be a big problem for Mike Huckabee since he's almost certainly running for the presidency. Okay, we're going to take our first break. When we come back, we have a couple more stories. I wouldn't have said this before, but now they seem comparatively quite light. We'll be back. Oh, and continue to tweet us at #TYT Live. We'll read some as soon as we're back from this break.
Where do you expect the storm surge? How much storm surge do they expect where you are, and when, if at all, damage that may have already happened or what they're expecting might happen?
At least a couple feet, Martha. I'm not a meteorologist, so I'm not going to give an exact number. But again, it hasn't come yet. The storm is still a couple hundred miles away. We're not expecting the worst of it until tonight. But you look, I mean, this does not look good. It looks like the sandy walkway out to the beach. It's actually got my foot stuck.
Oh my gosh.
You can see not a pretty picture here in Delaware.
Oh, Peter, take it easy out
But
there.
I'm okay.
All right, he's back up,
And just
folks.
everybody else in Rehoboth, if anybody else decides to come down here, they shouldn't because the roads are all closed and they have been since 5 o'clock. But if anybody comes down here to take a picture, don't go this way out to the beach.
Just go with it, Deucey. Go with it. To be fair, who knows how hard the wind is blowing against him?
It wasn't blowing that hard. I mean, I guarantee I'm the only guy sitting here who's covered. I covered 5 hurricanes.
No, really? With a pen?
I covered 5 hurricanes with a pen. Yeah, it's not that hard. It's all show. It's all drama. You don't know what he said. Something I did like there. I'm not a meteorologist. Like
That's true.
Like I was always guessing on storm show. I don't know, 6 feet, 8 feet. I have no idea. Like ask the weatherman. I don't have any idea.
I think it might have been wrong. I'm not sure that he's better.
I thought he handled the fall okay, but he did sound to me. He sounded, he sounded like a guy who belonged in Market 100 there at the beginning. He just was not. Yeah. There's nothing really authoritative.
Look, by the way, like you get out of college, you want to get into the news, and you're offered a position on Fox, you take it. We're not saying anything about him. We're just saying if you're his father, you have to acknowledge what you've done, what system you've helped to continue.
Why doesn't he spend 2 years in Buffalo? Pretty big market, bigger than maybe he should be. You learn, and then you come to Fox News.
Yeah, or possibly go directly to Fox News and then fall on air and tank your career.
That's been until tonight. But I mean, this does not look good. Oh, shit. It looks like the sandy walkway out to the beach. It's actually got.
But there was no reason for him to fall.
None. Well, I think it's a gap.
Yeah, there's that famous footage of you tripping over the light.
Yeah.
And it was understandable. There were tons of wires. You should have just, adjusting the light. Want to get that perfect. You got to remember that for next time.
By the way, I have vacation every summer now in Rehoboth Beach. Right there, and I will watch for that. I like how he said, if you come down here, it's such a long way to go for his dumb line. If you come down here, well, you can't because the roads are closed, but don't do that. But if you do, don't come this way, even though I haven't told you where I am.
Nailed it. Okay, by the way, there was at least 2 TYT lives I want to read. One, Empyrean Cypher, I appreciate him noticing this. He says, thank goodness Janky is coming back tomorrow. This starting on time is beginning to freak me out. Winky face. So I like that. That's funny. By the way, speaking of the winky face, my landlord occasionally comes home and takes my dog out with her dog for a walk. And so I responded with, oh, thank you, smiley face. Except I accidentally did winky face.
Your landlord's going to be fine. She just thinks you want to sleep with her.
Yeah. She's right.
Just real quick, do you want to sleep with her?
No. Our friendship is great the way it is, actually. I don't want to get in the way of that. Oh my God. Anyway, Eric Wallace also says, is there a graphic for Banana Pie Hour yet? There isn't, but there should be. Perhaps we can work on that. How old is your wife? She's a grown woman. I don't know how old she is. In her 50s? No, I don't know. 40? I have literally no idea. I'm not a meteorologist, okay? I don't know how old she is. She could be 35, she could be 45. I have no idea. And then let's see. No More Detonations also says, whoo! Ben Make 77 is looking normal and approachable again. Thanks for losing the tie and suit look.
Yeah, I like this look better. You look rugged.
This is what I think of him. This is what I think of, actually.
Yeah. I like it doesn't matter, but I mean, a lot of people were like, "Oh, love the tie." Like you can't.
Yeah, that's fine.
The problem with comments is it gets no win. Like you can't. But anyway, thank you. I appreciate that.
Don't pay attention. Just pay attention to us. Okay. I like the look.
Also, Anna does not like ties on air. She's been pretty clear about that.
I just think it's like, I don't know. I don't like the senatorial behavior with people in news. Like, just relax. I like this. You're much more relatable right now.
All right,
exactly.
Well, I like to. I wonder where the time to State of the Union. Also, it's a new tie. I wanted to wear it. It wasn't. It wasn't.
Do you, boo? Right. Do you?
Okay. Do you? Okay. And I'm gonna do this story. So technically, I'm doing Bill O'Reilly. Every guy's dream. Okay. Let's talk about Bill. President Obama wants Congress to act to raise the federal minimum wage and provide some assistance to literally millions of Americans who are in a bad way. That is not as big of a priority for those on the right, however. We have two reactions to that proposal for you. The first is Bill O'Reilly. Take it away, Bill.
And we have a soundbite that we asked you to analyze. Here it is.
And everyone in this Congress who still refuses to raise the minimum wage, I say this. If you truly believe you could work full-time and support a family on less than $15,000 a year, try it. If not, vote to give millions of the hardest working people in America a raise.
So the question becomes, how many people earning minimum wage is supporting families? Well, that's the point. I mean, you can't do that on $15,000 a year. I mean, especially you. I mean, you just can't do that. But the fact is that most people on minimum wage are young people. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, 50.4% are from 16 to 24 years old. And of the 3.3 million people on minimum wage, 66.8% are not married. 20.7% are married, so that means you're not talking about millions of people. Right, 1 out of 5.
Like 600,000 or so.
But it's a very low number making minimum wage anyway, 3 million about, in the workforce. It's infinitesimal.
Infinitesimal. So I found that to be interesting. Now, we all know that he's quite successful on Fox News, but 3 million, infinitesimal, doesn't even matter. I looked up what his market share is, the ratings that he gets, and look, I don't know what he got yesterday, but I just put in Bill O'Reilly audience, and on a night last year, he had 1.1 million viewers. Mm-hmm. So he had 1/3 of a negligible number. But he still considers himself quite important. I bet he gets 3 million some nights, but apparently that's an insignificant number of people.
Just to be fair, my hunch is that you looked at a rebroadcast.
That's entirely possible. But let's say he gets the 3 million, infinitesimal. But anyway, I love that you've seen that argument that he provided there given before. They're just young, they don't matter. They're just minorities, they don't matter. They're not married, they don't matter. So apparently, you do not matter unless you're a married, elderly white person, which also makes you a Fox News viewer.
By the way, a lot of these people aren't married because they don't have the means to get married.
That's a good point as well.
Right? So, I mean, you can frame the statistics any way you want, but the fact that the minimum wage is so low that people can't make ends meet is a huge problem, not just for the people that are trying to support their families, but for America in general. When you don't have a strong, healthy middle class, you don't have people that are contributing to the economy, right? If you can't afford to put food on your table, you're not going to go out there and spend money on other things. Yeah. So, like, this huge gap that we have, this income inequality that we have in the country is impacting everyone.
Yeah. And because Obama said try supporting a family, like, it's enough. If you work, suppose you're 27 years old and make minimum wage, like, you shouldn't be making $15,000 a year.
Try contributing to the economy with $15,000 a year.
Yes, and then the nonsense. And then the nonsense about who has minimum wage and what happens when you have minimum wage. Bill O'Reilly's version is.
It's not. It also, by the way, the numbers that they were giving you, it's a lie. I mean, it's literally true. They've come up with some way to say that it's 3 million that are literally making the federal minimum wage. But here is how they're lying to you. Let's say, I don't even know what the federal minimum wage is, like $7 perhaps. Let's say it's $7. Who cares? $7. That you're making the federal minimum wage. Perhaps that's 3 million. But here's the thing: you're having a hard time supporting a family if you make $7.10 or $7.25. Yep. If you make $7.25, you're not making the federal minimum wage. You still have a very hard time raising a family on that. So let's talk about the people, not just who are making minimum wage, but who would be benefited by a $10.10 minimum wage, which is what I consider the bare minimum, and that's what President Obama and some others are pushing for. According to the Economic Policy Institute, raising the federal minimum wage to $10.10 per hour by 2016 would raise the wages of 27.8 million workers who would receive about $35 billion in additional wages over the phase-in period. And if you know anything about what people who are making just $10 per hour have to do with their paychecks, that would inject $35 billion back into the economy almost immediately.
Yes.
It is not an infinitesimal number of people. It's like 1 out of 10 Americans.
But, John, I think that part of the problem is the fact that the federal government gets involved and has a minimum wage in the first place. I mean, I feel like if we allow companies and corporations to make these decisions on their own, and then we allow the American people to pick and choose where they work, then it's going to be more competitive. They're going to offer competitive wages, and that's just the way it's going to work out, right? Because they don't have a profit motive, and they're not concerned about nickel and diming every single employee that they have.
Yeah.
It's so stupid.
I don't know if you're right, but we should try it for 4 or 5 decades. Find out.
one small thing. 725 is the federal right now.
Yeah, 725.
And also, there was another point when they talked about married, and then 16 to 24, and then if these well, first off, the number was 50.4%, so the other 49.6%, fuck you, because that's a small number. Are 16 to 24 and they're teenagers and all that stuff. So, can you imagine how many single parents there are? Because they said they included married people, they assumed no one has kids unless they're married.
That's right.
There's tons of people that are unmarried that have kids. Yep. So that's included in these numbers of all these people. So that takes away all of their huge numbers that they're talking about, which is 50%. So again, if they actually stop and think about what they're saying, 50% of people that are making minimum wage are not all these people they just listed. F you, go home. Yeah. Who cares about you?
Yeah. And by the way, can we play this second O'Reilly clip? Because I love how the lies they tell about the sort of people who end up with minimum wage jobs.
So the president is really basically misleading everybody, saying it's this whole crew that's in the zone, but their kids trying. I started at Carvel. What was your first job?
Movie usher.
Okay, you got minimum wage, I bet, right? All right, I got minimum wage. I could eat a bowl of Sundays if I wanted my complexion to break out, which I really didn't. But we both started for minimum wage. We got into the marketplace. All right, we figured out what you had to do: show up, take a shower, and don't curse at the customer. Okay, and then you rise yourself up. That's what minimum wage is.
Bill O'Reilly is such a piece of shit. Like, he just is. He's a terrible human being. Like, look at the picture that he's painting of people who are working in minimum wage jobs, right? Take a shower. Don't curse out the customers or whatever. Like, because that's what people. Yeah. Another point I want to make really quickly before we jump in on the substance of that clip. You know, he's acting as though young people who have minimum wage jobs shouldn't be making more than what they're making now, right? That it's not that important. They don't have families to worry about. They don't have anything. They don't have any real responsibilities, except for maybe, I don't know, college, right? Paying for their education, which is now astronomical to the point where people have to take out loans, right? Yeah. So let's stop pretending as if, people between 18 and 24 are irrelevant. They don't have kids, or in his eyes, they don't have kids, and they're less likely to be married. So who cares? They can make minimum wage. No, they need to make money too. Don't act like they're just a negligible part of society.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a really great point. Yeah, and by the way, we had it was Ron Paul. They were talking about, I paid for my college education with a job I had on the side. Why can't they do it today? Nothing has changed. Bill O'Reilly, you get your Carvel job and then you raise yourself up. That was in the late 60s, early 70s. Nothing has changed in the world since then. It's as easy today as it was back then. That's ridiculous. The workforce is different. The sorts of jobs that are available to young Americans are different. The competition is different. College education, as Anna pointed out, is different.
Everybody works in the service industry. That's exactly where all the jobs are.
Yeah.
And we're
nothing against Carvel.
These guys, these conservatives, and some liberals too, with their applying the exact same standard of what they did to everybody else. I mean, man, that's probably the point I've talked about more on the Young Turks than ever. The bootstraps. I did it. Well, first of all, most of you didn't do what you think you did, and you had way more help than you thought you did. And other people come from different circumstances, and some people come from descendants who were enslaved and kept down that and had their ability to progress pushed down by Jim Crow laws. Others are immigrants who we thumbed our nose at for years. We've seen the study again and again and again of what happens when you apply for a job. If you seem black, just your name seems black, you don't get the job. Forget about it if you actually go in and are black, right? Like you go in, your name's John Baxter III, and like, oh man, it's a black John Baxter III. We can't hire this guy. I like the name, Jonathan Baxter III. So, and these guys presume that, like, because you succeeded, and, again, we know with Bill O'Reilly and raised in Levittown, which were built with the significant government help.
Yeah.
So his family could afford the fund.
Yeah. Like institutional racism, right, where loans were made available to certain types of people, but not to other.
But also, whether they were made available to other people or not, he still got them.
Yeah.
Like they got them. They got help. You got help, Bill O'Reilly. You got help.
Which then they could put mortgages on to pay for the college educations of their kids.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, I didn't grow up I grew up in a middle class money, but we lived above our means. Tried to. We always had a huge mortgage. They were all, until my dad went to work in PR when I was 16 or 17. Then he finally started making money, and then he split. But like, so but I know that I get it, that it was easier for me. Like, I know that it was. Like, we grew up in a nice house that we paid too much money for, but I didn't know. It was nice for me. And I went to a private school. Like, I don't think everyone should go to private school. You know? I mean, it's just dumb. Like, how dim are you not to see through your own, almost certainly incorrect notions about how you earned everything that you have? We all get help. It's a freaking community.
Yeah, it's like Joe Scarborough was saying. I don't understand why these minorities have so many problems with the cops. Why are they being so rude? I've never had a cop be rude to me before.
Yeah.
So clearly no one else in the country has. Yeah, I think members of the media, like politicians, could try to have a little bit more empathy and understanding. But unfortunately, we have
journalists should have some understanding. That's that's part of the job. You got to know what's true and what's not, and they repeat these fairy tales about how their lives were. You know, I mean, it's crazy. No one would think George Bush would know not to do that. You know, George Bush knows not to say, "Why can't everyone go to Yale?"
He wouldn't speak like that.
That was a great George Bush.
That was a great John Kerry impersonation.
It sounds just like that.
Yeah.
I say, I'm George W. Bush, as President of the United States.
What if behind closed doors? Unfortunately, we'll never know. We're going to be in a room with him alone. But we do have to end out the first hour, though, because I do want Anna to have a full second hour. So we're going to take a break. You should continue to tweet us at #TYT Live. Feel free to tweet about me sucking up to Anna. We'll read some of those sucking up tweets when we come back from this break. See you in just a few.
Anna, Ben, and John with you. We have an awesome hour ahead. And for Mike, who's watches TYT Live every day, the second hour will continue as the second hour always does every single day for the last 8 years since I've been here. There will be sex stories in this hour. If you don't like it, it's time to turn off the computer. We have lots of fun. Do you have any TYT Lives that you want to read?
Let's see. I just got to it. After the first break, we'll come back.
Okay, perfect.
Real quick, John, you alerted me to this news, but King Abdullah of Saudi Arabia has died. The announcement, I'm just going to read the first couple sentences because one of them is funny. The announcement made early Friday said his brother Salman had become king. So Salman is now I don't know if that means King Salman or King Salman Abdullah. I'm not actually sure, probably just King Salman.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about the implications.
Before the announcement, Saudi television cut to Quranic verses, which often signifies the death of a senior royal. King Abdullah, who was said to be aged around 90. Like we live in a world where the Saudi Arabians, they don't even get to know how old the guy is. He's around 90. I don't know. I haven't really checked. He didn't like to talk about him.
Yeah.
Anyway, King Abdullah, his daddy's been sick for many years. King Salman now is, so that's what you just say. He is
79.
79.
All right, let's move on. Facebook wants to fight against some of the conspiracy theories and hoax news stories that are posted on certain news feeds, and so now they will begin monitoring such links that are posted on their social networking site. And this is causing a little bit of controversy because it could lead to certain types of censorship that people are not in favor of, especially because a lot of the censorship lies in the hands of the actual users. So let me tell you exactly how Facebook plans on cracking down on hoaxes. According to reports, using the report post feature, users will now have the option to mark a story as false news. When a number of people have reported the story as inaccurate, now Facebook will add an annotation to warn users that many others have reported it as fake. So basically, it's similar to someone, let's say, flagging a video on YouTube if there's like nudity or adult content. Users will be able to kind of vote and decide whether or not something is inappropriate. But considering some of the content that's posted, I mean, my mind just thinks back to the whole Michael Brown case, and a bunch of people were posting a lot of stuff that other people disagreed with. I mean, people who disagree with you are obviously going to vote it down, or they're going to report it in this report post feature. And so, I mean, it's going to be a little bit of a conundrum there. I don't know.
It really sort of depends on the implementation and how it works. If all that happens is that you see that a story has more, hey, this is false, meets a certain threshold, well then, I don't know. I guess that might affect how you look at it. That might help. If it actually keeps stuff off the feeds, well then, is that what they say, the feeds?
The feed, yeah.
That's feeds. It's part of the Google.
Yeah. If it keeps stuff off I knew I shouldn't start talking about the story. I knew it. If it keeps stuff off the feed, then no. Then you're you're into a dangerous territory where sort of political affiliation and mostly, I guarantee you, the right will sort of bully stories off that they don't like.
I mean, that's definitely something that I'm concerned about. And what I do like and dislike about this attempt is that Facebook is not going to have an employee sitting around deciding whether or not a news story is, misleading or inaccurate. They're going to rely on people flagging the video or flagging the link or flagging the news story. But again, I mean, that has its own ramifications. Now, they're saying that they're not going to take content down, but they are effectively censoring certain things because if something is reported as inaccurate, it could disappear from feeds or the feed. So according to the report, look what you did to me. Look what you did to me. So the Daily Dot says, even with the reports, Facebook will not be removing links to fake stories entirely. Instead, those flagged as false and regularly debated or deleted, I should say, will be punished with reduced distribution in the newsfeed.
Can I make a prediction?
That's still censorship.
So they will have reduced distribution in the newsfeed, but I guarantee that the person who put the thing up could probably pay to bring that distribution back up.
That's another issue.
I think they're desperate for some way to monetize the content, but I don't think that this can work. I don't like the idea of a Facebook employee being the one to arbitrate it. but that could at least in theory work. If you're requiring that regular people reasonably read the article and then decide if it's false or not, how are they going to do that? On Reddit, you're supposed to downvote stuff that doesn't contribute, but people just use it to disagree. You can't trust people to do that.
A lot of people will, dislike a video, or they will, or they'll leave a nasty comment just based on what the headline is alone, not even with the content. Exactly. So that's a bit of an issue. But also, it really does bring up a bigger question about whether or not a social networking site, or let's say something like Reddit, has the obligation or the responsibility to be the police of the internet, right? So you have like a big search engine like Google, and of course Google will pull up some websites that have misinformation, but I don't think it's Google's job to decide which, results they should take out of the search, or, the results.
The feeds.
The feeds, exactly, the feeds.
But also, what does it even mean to say the story is untrue? That everything in the story is untrue? That they lay out some facts and then what they say should happen based on those facts is untrue? Or is it that they talk about Keystone XL and then they cite jobs numbers that are off in one case but not another?
Yeah.
How untrue does a story have to be marked as untrue? That's why PolitiFact will do an entire article breaking down every aspect of it. That's what you need to look into to know about the veracity of a story, not true or untrue.
But if there is a flip side, it would be that, look, 10 years ago, or 15 years ago, we didn't even have Facebook, and and forgive me for not, I have an account now, but I don't even run it. I don't even know what a feed is. What comes on the news feed, does that go to everybody?
So they have a strange algorithm, and it really depends on who you're subscribed to in your friends list. It's all very complicated.
As to what kind of stories you get.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of times, originally, your feed would be updated with the most recent post. That was a long time ago.
Posts by
your friends.
Right.
So you only get posts by people that you're either following, people who are your friends. And so before, it would be the most recent post up top on your feed, and you would see what people are doing, what they're
Twitter.
up to. It was very similar to Twitter in that sense. But then they came up with this strange algorithm where certain things will show up. There are friends on my list that post things every day. I've never seen their posts in my life.
Because you don't see,
it's another attempt to monetize things, which is why you can follow the Young Turks Facebook page, and they'll post something, and 9% of the people who have willingly opted in to see that content will see it. Only 9 to 10%. You have to pay literally hundreds of dollars to get it out to all.
But will there be a thing on Facebook about King Abdullah dying?
Yeah, there will also be trending stuff. There will be sponsored posts. There will be posts that have been paid for, those sorts of things.
But anyway, it might make things better. We don't know. It's important that they experiment with things. If this turns into an ability for the right to drum out stories that are true, but they don't like about climate change, right? And they'll deem some report about something from the United Nations that trended somehow, because kids love the UN reports, that they'll somehow kill that on the feed. I don't know. Then they'll fix it.
Also, it does bring up, I think, the most important question. How many people are getting their news from Facebook? I don't think that Facebook is known as a source for news. Right. Exactly. So, it would be interesting if Twitter tried to do something like this, right? Because I know that there are things posted to Twitter on a regular basis that are inaccurate. But with Facebook, I see it as a dying social networking site. I
wouldn't care.
Yeah, at this point, Facebook for me personally is used as an avenue in which I share my Instagram pictures.
But what about the feeds?
Yeah, what about the feeds? Here's what Facebook can be replaced by: a messaging app that also told you when your friends' birthdays were. That is the only thing that Facebook is needed for.
Absolutely true. All right, let's.
Amen. I don't know.
All right. Since marijuana is listed as a Schedule I drug, it's really difficult for researchers to do extensive studies on the drug. But now there's an important question kind of coming up, and it could have some ramifications into professional athletics. Is marijuana something that could be considered as a performance-enhancing drug? Now, unfortunately, right now, all we really have is anecdotal evidence indicating that it could be considered a performance-enhancing drug. But if we could just, reschedule marijuana or not schedule it at all, we could actually do real research into it and figure out whether or not that's true. Now, Yahoo Finance did this really interesting piece about how some people who are doing professional athletes, I should just say, admit to smoking marijuana, consuming marijuana, and a lot of them argue that it helps them in their sports careers because it lessens anxiety and it also allows them miraculously to focus on what they're doing, focus on their training, for instance. And it's fascinating stuff because, marijuana has a different impact on lots of different people. Mm-hmm. But in this case, some are arguing that it helps them. Now, one athlete says the following: marijuana relaxes me and allows me to go into a controlled meditational place. When I get high, I train smarter and focus on form.
Clifford Drzinski.
Mm-hmm.
Not familiar with his work. But he's a triathlete. I don't know that. Every time we learn more about enhancing performance, it makes it harder to take a moralistic stance against performance-enhancing drugs. Baseball is still coming out of the shadows of a scandal that really damaged the sport dramatically, steroid use. And no one's going to suggest that you can't hit while high. But if it helps you focus, is a performance-enhancing drug. Where are we drawing that line?
That's a really
something that makes you bigger, and something that we know is dangerous, like steroids. I get why you could draw a line there because you don't want to encourage other people to do it to keep up with you because it's dangerous, so we can't. And so maybe that's the place where you draw the line. That's my most comfortable spot on steroids. But the moralizing against people who took steroids, it feels old.
Yeah.
Especially when you know how many are.
Right, you know that a lot did, but I'm sympathetic to the ones who didn't. And we're like, hey man, I'm trying here. I don't want to take it. I shouldn't have to take steroids to keep up. But I'm dubious about this, but I don't get high a lot. Dubious. And I know this is going to be hard for.
That's a great word.
I'm not a highly trained athlete. But I would like to play softball high.
Yeah. No, and you bring up a really interesting issue within professional sports because there are some drugs out there that are completely legal, right? And people are prescribed these drugs because of certain conditions, and it does help them with their performance. So, for instance, Adderall. I'm reading more and more about professional athletes abusing Adderall because it helps them with their performance. It does keep you more focused. It does give you some energy.
Yeah, baseball basically had an amphetamine problem since that exploded in the 1970s. For years and years and years, they're banned now too. And you don't think of it as the same kind of performance enhancing as steroids, but look, no one's gonna equate baseball players with minors, but for 6 months a year, 7 months counting spring training, you're playing every day, you're traveling every 3 days, you're getting on planes, you're getting places at 4 a.m, you're in a different hotel room, and then you're playing an elite sport that requires intense concentration. And I'm sure it's hard to sleep, and I'm sure they're exhausted a ton, day games and then some night games and mixed, and very few, 18 days off over 6 months. I imagine that popping a bunch of amphetamines was incredibly useful. Now you have to there's a long process by which you have to prove that a doctor gave you this and that you need it for a condition other than the real condition that you want to take it for, which is I want to be awake and I want to be focused.
Right, exactly. Now going back to marijuana, some more testimony from people who have utilized this. This is actually from a researcher who's looked into it. We have cannabinoid receptors throughout our brains, and when the THC, which is a psychoactive ingredient in the marijuana, hits those receptors, it triggers a system that reduces anxiety, that you would feel more aggressive in a natural, aggressive is a natural reaction to the drug. So,
you feel more aggressive because it reduces your anxiety, although that flies in the face of the idea because most people on marijuana are not.
I'm not aggressive, but in this case, the researcher was responding to a professional skier who said, look, when I smoke marijuana, I'm actually a little more risky in my skiing. I don't have as much fear when I'm skiing as I do when I'm sober.
Yeah. It's also possible that when people mess with, like when you drink, you might still feel like you can drive, for instance, but your actual capabilities don't match up with your perceived competence in terms of. So yeah, he thinks one thing possibly. That doesn't mean it's an accurate reflection of his ability to ski.
It's also like we presume that anxiety for professional sports and many things is a retards performance. But we don't know that that's true either. I mean, that right, like you're saying, that guy skiing and thinking, oh man, I'm going to be more risky, and you might be thinking, dude, stop being so risky.
Right, you're putting yourself in danger.
You're putting yourself in danger, and like you're not completing the. I don't know. You're not hitting the turns the way you think you should be because you're focused on that big one coming up that you're not afraid.
Yeah.
So right, your perception might be totally wrong. It does not, knowing as little about weed as I do, having smoked it as how do you smoke? We never.
No.
Never ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. How recently?
Not recently. Years.
And since I don't smoke that often, it seems counterintuitive to me that weed is going to help a professional athlete.
Yeah.
Because if you're a professional athlete, then whatever anxiety you're feeling, like say it's, I'll keep using baseball, where it's intense personal concentration in a dramatic moment, like, it's you and the pitcher and everybody's waiting for you to perform. You can't count on your teammates for anything.
Yeah.
It's you. There's anxiety in a dramatic at bat. They're used to it. We don't know that anxiety doesn't fuel them to do better. And being all relaxed and mellow strikes me as, oh, that was a nasty curveball, man. I should have swung.
Yeah.
Way back, didn't they used to drink?
Yeah, they drink all the time.
people
They're not
drink
drunk
and stuff?
during the games.
Oh.
I mean, guys, these are the professional athletes are the greatest self-regulators of all time. I mean, they sort of exactly know. All right, now's when I got to stop drinking. Now's when I got to get some sleep because I didn't sleep at all last night. Like I can't bang a stranger tonight. I got to get some sleep. But it's a totally interesting idea. It just seems so counterintuitive.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, more marijuana news for you guys. Jamaica is considering decriminalizing marijuana, especially if it is for possession. So this piece of legislation has actually been introduced to Jamaica Senate, and they are set to vote on it. And from all reports, it seems as though they are likely to pass it. Now, let me give you the details. It would make possession of 2 ounces or less a ticketable offense that would not result in a criminal record. Cultivation of 5 or fewer plants on any premises would be permitted. Rastafarians who use marijuana as a sacrament could also legally use cannabis for religious purposes for the first time in Jamaica, where the spiritual movement was founded in the 1930s. So they're also going to focus more heavily on traffickers as opposed to those who have possession of the marijuana, and the Cannabis Licensing Authority to deal with the various regulations needed to cultivate, sell, and distribute marijuana for medical, scientific, and therapeutic purposes. So they're going to use the money that they earn from, let's say, taxing it and selling it and all of that to basically fund an educational campaign for people to be discouraged from smoking marijuana, which I think makes more sense.
Yeah.
So decriminalize it when people have it for, personal use, and then whatever funds that you earn, use that to create an educational campaign to deter people from smoking.
You know what? You're Jamaica. Maybe just embrace it. Like, don't spend a lot of money.
Did the previous year. I don't know if that can be traced back to the legalization. It could just be a continuation of an ongoing trend, but it certainly flies in the face of people who think that legalizing it means that every kid's going to be smoking up all the time.
Well, I just said, regardless of what the percentages are of young Jamaicans who use marijuana, it is part of the culture there. Mm-hmm. Like, as we know, I don't know about for kids, but we know it is for grown-ups. Mm-hmm. And so, it's a place people go and smoke weed. And again, it doesn't mean...
When I went to Jamaica, I'm not even kidding you, it literally took 5 minutes to get approached by someone who wanted to sell us weed.
Yeah, it's there. It's not and it doesn't, and things are fine.
Yeah, so, I think that's the most important thing to take away from this, right? I mean, I don't care if it's the United States, I don't care if it's Jamaica, I don't care which country it is. The fact that anyone gets criminalized for possession of marijuana is absolutely ridiculous. And look, this is just, my hypothesis or speculation. I'm not 100% sure if this is the case, but the timing of this is interesting, right? And I think that the United States does, in a lot of cases, serve as an example to other countries. And if you have states legalizing marijuana for recreational use here, if you have states that have legalized marijuana for medicinal use here, it sends a message to other countries that, hey, you know what, this isn't something worth wasting resources on. We should stop criminalizing and incarcerating people for this. And that's a good thing. For once, I feel like the U.S. is on the right track when it comes to one particular issue. So we'll see what the impact will have internationally. All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, things are disastrous in Japan, especially with the birth rate. I'll tell you more on that story. And then later on, is there sexism within professional tennis? My favorite story of the day. Welcome back to the Young Turks. I don't have specific TYT lives, but I just want to state something very quickly, and I'm doing it in the most respectful way possible. Okay.
Fuck all y'all.
No.
Sorry.
Okay. The second hour is not supposed to be a political hour. It hasn't been a political hour ever in the history of the Young Turks. Okay. My job is to do what I do, and I can't deviate from that. I can't change it. It is what it is. If you don't like the second hour, I'm not trying to be rude to you. I'm just trying to let you know this is what you should expect, okay? And if you don't like it, it doesn't mean that I don't like political news. It doesn't mean that I'm a moron. It doesn't mean that I don't follow political news. It doesn't mean that I'm just a cute girl who's here to, here for shits and giggles, okay? I take my job seriously. This is what it is. If you don't like it, please stop tweeting me about it, because I will block you, and I'm tired of it. It's that simple. This is my job. I don't know what to do. What am I supposed to do with my life? I'm supposed to completely, do random political stories and go against what I'm paid to do?
No, you're supposed to ignore the people on Twitter.
No, but it's a constant thing every day. And I know I know people are going to think this is unprofessional, but welcome to the Young Turks, where we're honest with you guys. This is what I do, and I'm tired of being hassled for it.
Yeah. So the one thing that I disagree with is you said, well, one thing that it's always been this way. We have always done stories like that, but you have changed it. You have made it more substantial.
Yeah,
Like, it's not what it was 6 years ago. You do lots of serious stories.
I don't think the audience, or some audience members, I should say, understand the struggle, the constant struggle that I had to go through just to get the second hour to where it is today. You want to know what the second hour was? Let's say 8 years ago or 7 years ago when I started, it was camel toe stories, Lindsay Lohan stories, Kim Kardashian stories, like the most trivial, stupid bullshit you could ever imagine. At least we're talking about stories that might not be political, but they're at least newsworthy. And if you don't like hearing about sex, if it makes you uncomfortable, sorry, it happens in this hour time to time. You shouldn't watch the second hour. That's all I'm saying. And I'm not doing it to be rude. I'm not trolling anyone. I'm just being honest with the audience.
Well, also, bear in mind, that you're saying this, you just finished a story about literally a law being changed in one country, and now we're going to talk about a significant social problem in another country. So,
but look,
it is political, like, to that extent.
Yeah.
And it is substantive. And for those two countries, these are incredibly important issues.
But what I would say to you is, Brian Williams does not get off the set of the NBC News and get moved by what people are tweeting at him.
I know.
So don't do it. Like, they don't get it, and you don't have to answer to them. Ever.
It's just frustrating because I don't consider myself Brian Williams. I consider myself someone who does an online news show that wants to be engaged with the audience. I do care what the audience thinks, and I do want to give them an entertaining, important, substantive show. But my role here is not to do what Cenk does. I'm hired for a completely different purpose, and I've been doing the same thing for nearly a decade.
Right. So you're literally responding to people who have not figured the show out in the 8 years that you've been here. They're not going to get it. They're not going to get it.
I just had to get that off my chest because it's just weighing down on me, and it's frustrating to have to justify what I do for work. But anyway, nonetheless, let's move on. We have good stories, and I want to do them. All right. Nearly half of individuals in Japan say that they have absolutely no interest in having a love life, much less a sex life. And for those of you who think that that's not that big of a deal, it actually is, because the birth rate in the country is declining rapidly. We're having more and more elderly people who are dependent on others, but there are less people to take care of them. So it's having an impact on the economy. So let me give you the details on this. Nearly half of Japanese adults are not having sex, with more than a fifth of married men and women saying that they were too tired from work to make love. More than 20% of all Japanese men between 25 and 29 said they had little or no interest in sex whatsoever. Nearly a quarter of all women, single or married, said sex was too bothersome. So this is a problem that's been, kind of developing over, several years. But now it's gotten so bad that if you look at the birth rate in 2014, more people died than more people were born. And so, again, you have an aging population that is dependent on younger individuals, but you're having less and less young individuals taking care of them because they don't exist. Let's fast forward to graphic number 12. The Japanese population is expected to drop by a third in the next 50 years. Roughly 1.001 million people were born and 1.269 million people died last year, leaving the country with 268,000 fewer people overall.
This flies in the face of almost every anime I've ever seen.
Well, it's actually, it's very difficult to be impregnated by a tentacle. It's very difficult.
Oh my God. The girl last night, she looked like she was having so much fun having sex. She did not seem bothersome to her.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No, it almost seems like
I forget
to get pregnant when you're in agony, perhaps.
I forget that there's anime which isn't porn sometimes.
Yeah.
So the one thing that's sort of weird about this to me, like, obviously there are reasons for having more people die than are born. They're bad. Socially, they're bad. But it seems odd that after all these years of the population getting larger and larger, it's been happening for a very long time, obviously. Like, why does it always have to go up? And why, for instance, do they say that, if the business isn't growing, it's a problem? Why can't it do as well this year as it did last year? Maybe it was a success last year. We have this need as humans to always be spreading, always be growing. Why can't we come to some sort of parity with the environment we find ourselves in?
Yeah, I think, look, the worst part about this is, like, of course there are the people who argue, like, hey, we need population control, we're overpopulated anyway. But aside from that, I mean, when you look at the way the economy is structured and when you look at just the aging population, it does have a big impact, right? You don't have young people working because they don't exist, right? So they're not contributing to the economy. And then you have elderly people who might have retired or they're no longer able to work and they need help. And there's no one there to help them. So it does have some significant ramifications.
That's the big thing there is that these people will get old and there'll be no family to take care of.
Well, and actually, there's a solution in there, but also a problem, as Japan is literally trying to create robots to care for elderly people. I'm not joking around. Robotics technology will help that problem, but it will also probably exacerbate the problem of the young Japanese not wanting to have sex with humans. And that's the sad part, really. It's one thing for fertility rates to go down. It's another for people to not want to express themselves physically.
Their grandfather's robot?
Not that same robot necessarily, perhaps a different one.
Yeah, but I really want to get to the bottom of it. Like, what is it exactly? By the way, I love it every time we talk about a story involving the Japanese or anything like that. Like, John has to mention the robots. Like, nothing excites
they're literally
John.
trying to create robots.
I know, but nothing excites me more than robots. Sex robots, worker robots.
Something has to, okay? But no, I really do feel bad. Like I said, I'm totally fine with there being fewer babies born or whatever. People don't want to have kids
as long as they're Japanese.
As long as they're Japanese. But I don't want there to be a country where, like, 1 out of 3 people are like, I don't feel any need to fall in love or have a relationship. Like, that is sad. We want that to continue.
Yeah.
So Japan needs to. Those stats are so alarming that Japan needs to solve that problem, and I presume you solve it by whatever it would take to some process by which these kids feel less pressure to work.
Yeah.
You know,
or incentivizing marriage financially, like providing financial incentives.
Yeah, but you almost it seems, yes, that would work, but to me, you almost have to start with what's closer to the problem is that they're constantly, and it's true specifically to the people who are too tired after work, but also I presume there's other people who are working really hard too.
Yeah.
And that's why you're just not having any interest in it. You've got to come up somehow with a culture where
there's a little more balance.
Quite right. There's a little more balance, right?
Yeah. And it's interesting because I remember when we did a story on this in the past, there were a lot of women who were very career-oriented, career-minded. That was their number one priority. And they were so focused on creating a career for themselves that they saw relationships as a hindrance.
Yeah.
And so when they have that kind of attitude, then, I mean, guys are going to respond to it in the way that they have been responding to it, right? They're going to think that it's too bothersome to actually approach women because women
aren't having it.
But 5 years ago, this story was hot. Now it's depressing because 5 years ago, it was like these women don't want relationships, but they totally want them. You know,
now they've lost that.
So you could go to Japan and nail 8 Japanese girls in a 3-week vacation, and then come home feel like the coolest guy in the world.
Yeah, that's exactly what I took away from that story.
Right. I can't
now
be
we have to go to Thailand.
I can't be the only one. No, and now it's like they're not even interested in sex.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a.
I find this to be very interesting because I think that there's the very real possibility that something like this is already happening in America or could get worse. And I'm surprised we've gotten this far into the conversation without the word zap being brought up. There, you're not going to bring up your zap theory?
You guys have already, completely dismantled it and with absolutely no merit. So I'm just
what about, okay, all right, I'll dismantle it right now. South Korea. Like, South Korea is big on technology.
But we know Japan, leads the way, and then they're absolutely obsessed. We originally talked about when we said a lot of men are hugging up with pillows because there's an anime character on them rather than having actual relationships. Okay, but the thing is, we can have these baseless arguments and say, oh yeah, you know, Japan is just they're when Jake actually I shouldn't quote Jake and saying it's the argument we have, but no, Jake likes to always say how Japan, there's one particular way because he did one story about the panties or something, and that's just where they are. I was like, okay, dude, listen, you can't group the entire country based on a story we did about some panties in a microwave or whatever.
No, it was in a vending machine.
Well, maybe
they take them out for the
right.
But yeah, but this was my theory came off of an actual story we did where they said people are literally more engulfed in the technology than they are in having human relationships. If you don't have human relationships, you don't have sex. If you don't have sex, you don't have kids. Your population is dropping. I'm just saying, and my theory, which is not based on any scientific evidence, was that we're wired creatures, and we have wiring go through our brain. And if you're just
going back and forth with this machine in your face is maybe zapping your desire to do other natural things.
I don't think you're right, because I think Anna's point is overwhelming. Like South Korea, they're still fucking, so we think.
Now we don't know the numbers on what's the leading. I always thought it was Japan, the leading country that has.
TYT send me to find out.
And we don't also know that Japan, that they look at their phones more. We just know that.
We said that they're the leader in technology. They have more technology than anyone else. And now maybe I'm missing. Maybe that story from years ago is wrong. I don't know.
For years, they were using their phones in Europe way more than we were here for things other than phone
calling on the phone.
Yeah, and for texting and for so.
Again, maybe the stories that we did were wrong. It started when we said Japan has more of this type of technology than anyone
else. But it seems refined to Japan. They can't have substantially more of technology. Yeah. They just can't, because as soon as they invent it, they send it over somewhere else. So, and we have it all here. It just... So in 3 years, we're not going to want to have sex either? I don't think it.
I'm really tired right now. I am very tired. I've been doing a lot of shows.
But that's it.
But you guys still want to have sex.
I would still have sex. Yeah. That's right.
Look, she's going to have to do muscle work.
I heard that's how it usually works out anyway.
No, John, you won't have sex with whoever it is.
My Yelp reviews are horrible.
All right.
John won't have sex because he wants to preserve the friendship.
Oh my goodness. Anyway, look, I don't know what the answer is. I don't know exactly why this is happening, but I suspect it has more to do with what Ben mentioned. There needs to be more of a balance between work and social life, and right now it seems like everyone's hyper focused on.
Okay, now we're going off of that. So should we say, we work just as much as Japanese, so they work a lot too. So your theory is that they work too much and they don't want to care about relationships.
No, but my argument isn't. It's definitely because
I didn't either. I said 3 times. My theory. I said it 3 times. My theory is that's what it is. I'm not a neuroscientist. I don't know how the brain actually works.
What we do know is that the work ethic in Japan is serious. It's one reason why they kick the shit out of us in cars and technology.
I thought our technology is the same. We just heard this 5 seconds ago from you.
That's where it originates. Not use. They're not using it anymore.
So they just make it and never use it. Nobody touches it over there.
Japanese.
They don't invent stuff and then give it to all their people first. That's not how companies
work. It's right there. I mean, it's like imports for anything. The country that builds it has it there. It's like
Japanese work ethic is what changed the American car industry, and it's what forced us to keep up in electronics and almost everything they put their mind to. They're incredibly good at it, and it sounds like that now that women have been significantly incorporated into the Japanese workforce, that they have the same bug that men has, and now we have 2 different sexes not interested in, at least women before, when kept out of the workforce, would want a family, and now they're like, no, fuck it, I want to win this game too. I'm just zapping is possible.
And I'm saying, last time, 4th or 5th time, I didn't say I'm the ruler of all this whole thought conversation. You should listen to me because I'm 100% right. That's my theory.
Wait, really quick. I know we've gone on way too long. Really quick question. So, Jer, I'm kind of leaning towards you. So do you think that for that reason, we're going to see it here too? Because we are adopting the technology.
Possibly. I think it would take a while.
I think we're obsessed with sex, and I don't think it's going to stop.
Yeah,
I think we can have
she's looking at porn right now. I think she's got a point.
I mean, we can literally have 3 monitors with porn following us around at all times, and we could be like masturbating 28 times a day. Everyone still wants to have sex.
Christ, that would take the edge off, though.
Anyway, moving on. Something completely different. There is now a question as to whether or not there is significant sexism within professional tennis, and the whole conversation was brought up recently when a 20-year-old tennis player by the name of Eugenie Bouchard was basically kicking ass in the Australian Open, and then she had a post-game interview with an interviewer who wanted to ask her to twirl around. Now, we have video of this, right? All right, so let's take a look at the video. Before you take a look at it, though, you should know that prior to this interview, she had tweeted something about Serena Williams and how she liked the outfit she was wearing while she was in a tennis match. With that said, take a look.
Now, last night, you tweeted that you love Serena's outfit. Obviously, the fluoro is working for you girls at the moment. She was kind enough to give us a twirl. Can you give us a twirl and tell us about your outfit?
A twirl?
A twirl, a pirouette. Here we go.
I
mean, I have to say, I honestly think Serena's outfit is the best, even better than mine. I'm going to give her that.
I did not read into that it was as awkward as other people had said to me. I think that she was a bit shy because she's in front of a crowd and she's not a public speaker. She's a tennis player. Like, she's comfortable when she's in the game. I think she was perfectly happy there, but he shouldn't have asked it that. And he said, "Give us a twirl. Come on, give it." Like, he pushed her into it.
Yeah, I mean, when you're in a situation like that, you can't really say no.
Because you look bad.
Because you would. I mean, I don't think you'd look bad, but I think people would perceive you as being bitchy or something like that. So you're kind of like put in a difficult situation. But it's funny. I read about it, and the way that people are writing about it is very different from the way I perceived it from watching the video. From the video, it seems like she's shy and uncomfortable, but it doesn't seem like she's like upset or there's like.
Or she feels like it's sexist.
Or that she feels like it's
sexist. Didn't feel like it at all.
Now, she did talk about it. She said the following. It was very unexpected. I don't know, an old guy asking you to twirl. It was funny.
Threw him under the bus.
Yeah.
Jesus. He gets to read that today.
You mentioned the tweet she had earlier. Also, Victoria Azarenka, another significant player. She wrote, "Serena is rocking that outfit. Cut out back. Sexy." And then at Serena Williams, and then Eugenie Bouchard said, "Love Serena's outfit." It's funny. I mean, she loves Serena's outfit. It's just what strikes me as a totally fair point is that one tweet, 3 words, "Love Serena's outfit."
Yeah.
And that became his question.
Yeah.
Look, here's the thing. I'm not against reporters asking the stupid questions about what you're wearing, or like I get uncomfortable when female professional athletes are asked about their love lives, right? I mean, male professional athletes are asked about those things too, but usually in a post-game interview with male athletes, they talk about performance. I mean, that takes priority over everything else, and then the other stuff kind of comes later, maybe if they have time. In this case, I mean, this 20-year-old Canadian tennis player is kicking butt, right? In the Australian Open.
Yeah, she did really well last year too.
Yeah, and so and last year she was asked about whether or not she has a crush on Justin Bieber, right? So it's like those types of questions kind of belittle what she just achieved. So if you had first asked her, "Hey, how do you feel about this win?" or whatever question that tennis players get asked, then I would be okay with him saying, "Hey, you know what? I like your outfit. Why don't you give it a twirl, whatever." Even in that case, it makes me a little uncomfortable. But again, I think that there's just too much emphasis on what are you wearing and what do you look like, and that stuff is okay as long as you also focus on the achievements of these players.
Here's the problem. A couple of problems. One, the sports broadcasting world is it's really hard to penetrate and break through with something interesting because you ask and they give very stock, uniformed answers and everything, big win, when did you know you had it? They gave 110%, what was the key moment of the match, it's really, so he was trying to have fun. Now, in defense of the interviewer, and it's totally, Serena Williams responded to this by saying, we have her tweet, so we get that person, then I'll group her in.
We
it's
do
a video.
have a video.
Oh, great. All right, so here's Serena talking about it.
Well, the commentator asked me to twirl. I necessarily wouldn't ask Rafa to twirl or Roger to twirl, but whether it's sexist or not, I don't know. I don't know. I can't answer that.
Were you bothered when you were asked by that to do it?
I didn't really want to twirl because I just was like, I don't need all the extra attention. So, but yeah, it was fine. I don't think and look that deep into it. Life is far too short to focus on that. We have so many other problems that we want to deal with, and that we should focus on. So whether I twirl or not, it's not the end of the world. I mean, it's just all about being positive.
Okay,
sounds like a bother.
She gave a super reasonable response.
Yeah, she's obviously smart. She thinks that it is a problem, but she doesn't. She's rich and famous. She doesn't want to act like it compares to other problems, but it is still a problem.
Yeah, and also I think that she doesn't want to be caught up in some random controversy involving an interviewer asking a questionable question. But real quick, Ben, just to give you guys more context into this, look, if you just take this situation as an isolated incident, that's one thing, right? It's easy to have, kind of like a nonchalant reaction to this. But I mean, you kind of have to look at it in the context of how female tennis players are questioned during the interviews. Like last year, we did a story about a Romanian tennis player by the name of, what is her name? Simona Halep. And during a post-game interview, the interviewer asked her about her breast reduction, right? So the first question that the interviewer asked her was uncomfortable, but I think that you can probably give it a pass because it has to do with her performance. He asked her, as your profile rises, people find out more about you. Your breast reduction surgery was 3 or 4 years ago. Does that play any part in your success? So she answers that question. You know, she says, yeah, it was a long time ago, my breast reduction. I'm happy for that. Now, if I have to do again for tennis, I would do, yeah, it was a good decision for me. Okay, leave it there. Leave it there. That's all you have to ask. He continues, what about outside the tennis? Which is a funny way of phrasing the question.
It's like two foreigners trying to speak English.
And she wrote,
what about your breasts? What would you do with them outside of the tennis?
So she responds,
Your now little breasts outside of the tennis. What do you use them now?
she responds, sorry? And he asks, what about outside the tennis? She's like, outside the tennis, what? You said you would do it again. And she says, I don't want to say anything about this. And then she laughs, right? So, like, it's just, some of the questions are inappropriate. And I think that it's okay to call out the interviewers on it.
Yeah, you can't ask about the breast reduction surgery outside of the tennis.
The only possible explanation is that he meant, did it solve other health problems or whatever?
No, he was asking about her love life. He was asking about her love life.
Okay.
Look, I mean, it would be like, I don't know, me interviewing David Beckham and being like, hey, yo, your dick looked real big in those Calvin Klein ads. How about outside the football, right?
Does your penis get in the way when you're running? What about outside soccer?
Outside the soccer.
Right. What about outside of the soccer? Do you ever trip on your big penis when you're going to the store? It's just a question. Relax.
Oh my God.
But the difference is, of course, is that there is some difference between the sexes, and I think that those, and the danger here is that I start talking and instantly you run the risk of sounding like you're on red eye, you know, and that they're men's right activists who are all little punks who are gonna be like, yeah, way to go, Ben, because I ain't on your side. But there are differences, and they're okay. Like the women pay more attention to what they're wearing, right? I mean, it seems like both Eugenia Bouchard and Victoria Azarenka thought to tweet about Serena's outfit.
Yeah.
Rafael Nadal is never going to tweet about Roger Federer's outfit, right? It's not going to, it just isn't going to be a thing they focus on. Guys do plenty of trivial things. This is trivial. It's not mean or anything.
Yeah.
We spend our lives doing trivial things, and we enjoy many of them. And so if you're going to tweet about it, then I suppose it is okay for an interviewer to ask about it. It doesn't bother me. I sort of think that moment is okay. There are a lot of responses she can give, many of which she'd be heroic. She did great, you know, but if she'd said, you first, the crowd would have been like, oh my God, hilarious. And it would be nice if now, if now Nadal or Federer twirl.
Give a twirl.
Give a little twirl after an interview just to show it. But yeah, it's not as, the more time, you were, if I may, you were more against the story just because you didn't think it was that important.
I actually didn't think that this particular incident was important enough to cover on the show. I'm being honest with you guys. But if you look at the bigger picture and some of the past interviews that female athletes have had to deal with, it's I think it is problematic. If you focus more on their accomplishments and then maybe you have fun with the interview later and say, hey, you know what, your outfit's awesome. Like, it's neon. I like it. Let's take a look at it, whatever. I think that that's fine. I'm not against those types of questions. I'm against questions about breast reduction surgery, definitely. But
the first one was okay because you're right. The first one could matter. I mean, because that question would be asked of a male athlete, not breast reduction surgery, but you would say, you had your hip replaced.
How's it help you outside of the soccer?
Right.
And also, we have to remember that there was a long period of time where I imagined the most recognizable female tennis player was known because of things like Maxim and not because of performance, which is more rare for male sports. You're rewarded for not necessarily the right.
Yeah, and that was, and she embraced that.
Anna Kournikova?
Kournikova embraced that, but, that probably didn't, it simultaneously helped and hurt women's tennis.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, one last story for you guys. For some people in their 20s, times are tough and they can't afford something as simple as a date. But that's not stopping 27-year-old or 26-year-old Tom Packer.
Packer could use a little bit of help.
That'll wrap it up. It's been a good show. Thanks, everybody. Wow.
Nailed it. All right.
How was your Pecker outside?
All right, 26-year-old Tom Packer wants to go out on dates, but as a bartender and occasional writer, he's having a hard time paying for them. Now, he has an interesting formula of 13 dates. It takes 13 dates to find your true love, and so in order to afford these 13 dates, he has gone to the internet, has relied on Indiegogo for crowdfunding. So he's asking people to donate to his cause so he can take 13 very, very special ladies out on a date in a search for true love. He says the following: I spend my time writing and making cocktails in a local bar. This, however, means that I sadly don't have the funds for 13 dates, especially if I want to impress the ladies. Okay, so Tom goes on to explain that there's apparently his formula for going around, which says that it takes 13 dates to find love. I already told you guys that. So he's actually looking to raise £1,300, okay, so he can spend £100 on each date. That's his plan. So what do people get in return for donating money to his cause? Let's take a look at that. If you donate £1 to his Indiegogo campaign, you will get a thank you letter from him. £10 will get you a signed photo, because everyone wants a photo of
a person they've
26-year-old
never heard
Tom
of.
Packer.
Yeah.
£100 gets you a guaranteed date with him in London, but you have to pay for the travel expenses. Okay. £500, you get a date and a poem written by him.
Oh, Jesus, what do you get? Can it for 101 for, what is it, £500 you get a poem?
Yep.
For 501 poem, for 501 pounds, don't write the poem.
But here's the real deal, okay? £1,000 will get you a date with him in Paris. So it's kind of amazing because he thinks people are idiots.
When does he take you back to meet his Amish parents?
He's hilarious. So basically you are paying him to take you on a date.
Yes, that's right. And you can have the date in London, you can have it in Paris, but either way, you're paying for it.
You're paying for it. Remember, not only are you donating for the date, you're also paying your own travel expenses.
Yes. And you're paying for the privilege of going out with a guy that admits that the lifestyle he chooses makes it so he can't afford dates that you so desperately want to date.
I mean, I'd want to marry him. Like, he sounds like he'd be a great
husband. That's £10,000.
And it's definitely Indiegogo?
Indiegogo.
He doesn't show up anymore.
He might have taken it down.
Maybe he's backed up. Maybe he made it.
Oh, that's true. That could have been a possibility.
Yeah, he could have made it quickly.
He got so embarrassed from the reports on his stunt that he took it down.
Yeah.
That's another possibility.
By the way, you don't need to spend £100 to impress a girl. Like, if your lifestyle is bartending and writing poetry on park benches, there's probably a girl for you. You can find that girl, and you don't have to spend £100 to impress her. Maybe she'll be impressed with your awful poetry.
Yeah.
That's how love works.
I think some of my best dates were actually they were free. Yeah, it was like moments where you get to actually get to know someone.
Yeah.
The bedroom.
And then you get excited about
the truck stop. You don't have to pay anything. Perhaps gas.
Right. Yeah. And you get excited about seeing their Packer.
Exactly. He's going to run all right.
All right, guys, we're out of time. Thank you so much for watching. There will be a post-game show for our members. Jake will be back tomorrow, and we will have a power panel. I hope you enjoy your night, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.